everyone, it's Karolyn here with a project for the February release class. I've created a quick gift idea that includes a bright and vibrant wine tag and matching card. They feature the new uncorked stamp set, the wine tag dynamic, the wine service dynamics, and the cheers dynamics. I've also included the confetti background stamp and the blueprints 15 and 28. I started off by blending some distress inks together to create some panels that I'll use in a bit to die cut from. I found a few favorite distress ink blends that make me happy, and I've used a couple of them here. I'm only showing you the process for one of the blends just to give you an idea of how I do this. Here I'm blending some picked raspberry with salty ocean. I start out pretty light and work the ink into the paper at a slow and steady pace. My favorite ink blending paper is MFT's smooth white cardstock. It's amazing and makes ink blending effortless. Anyways, I continue to build up color and blend the two together to create a variegation of three colors. The two mix together to create a third. The other ink color combos that I use for my die cutting panels are mustard seed and peacock feathers and mustard seed and picked raspberry. I try to use color theory to mix colors that play well together to create another beautiful color. It's not brain surgery, but boy is it fun. Next, I'm die cutting the parts of the tag and card that I'll use to assemble the focal images of both projects. I'm using the wine service dynamics to die cut 2 wine glasses and 2 wine bottles from the previously inked panels. I simply position the dies onto the inked panels and secure them with a bit of washi tape, then run them through my Big Shot. I tend to do all of my die cutting all at once. It helps me to stay on track and keeps me organized. It's how my messed up brain works, I guess. I also cut 2 sentiments using the Cheers Dynamics. Same process. Oh, how I love that scripty font. I'll most definitely be using this die over and over again. Lastly, I'm die cutting the corks and labels for the wine bottles out of some brushed silver cardstock. It adds beautiful texture and interest to what otherwise would be a somewhat flat image. The new wine tag die is awesome. It cuts a perfectly proportioned tag, provides a scored line for easy assembly, and the stitch detail around the circular opening is lovely. I'm cutting it out of a 4 1/4 inch by 11 inch piece of smooth white cardstock. I have one last bit of die cutting, and that's the image panel for the card. I'm using the stitched rectangle from the Blueprints 15 Dynamics to cut out a 4 inch by 5 1/4 inch piece of smooth white cardstock. Now for the stamping. I do the same thing with my stamping that I do with my die cutting. I do it all at once. I'm stamping the confetti background onto the stitched rectangle panel using Sweet Tooth pigment ink. I always use my Misty stamping tool to stamp the red rubber backgrounds because it ensures precision in case I've missed a spot and need to restamp a second time. And the Sweet Tooth pigment ink is some of my all-time favorite white ink. It's really opaque and works great with embossing powder. I also stamped the confetti background onto the wine tag, but before I stamped it, I covered up the top portion of the wine tag with some wide post-it tape. If you don't have post-it tape, any kind of masking material will work in its place. Tone-on-tone heat embossing adds subtle texture. For me, it's the perfect finishing touch and takes a project to the next level. I'm heat embossing the image panel and the wine tag with white detail embossing powder. For the sentiment, I decided to do a bit of stamp surgery and use just a portion of one of the stamps from the new uncorked stamp set. I carefully used my detail scissors to separate the "on your birthday" portion from the rest of the stamp. This is super easy to do as long as you're careful not to cut into the other portions of the stamp, and it makes your stamps even more versatile. I've inked up the stamp with more Sweet Tooth pigment ink, and I'm stamping it onto some black licorice cardstock. But before I stamp, I'm prepping the black cardstock with my anti-static tool. This part is critical because it will prevent random bits of embossing powder from sticking to areas that you don't want them. Since I need 2 of the sentiments, I flip my panel in my Mini Misty and am stamping it a second time on the other side. I covered them both with white detail embossing powder and heat embossed them off camera. I'm using the narrow sentiment banner from the Blueprints 28 Dynamics. It's the perfect width for my sentiments, but it's a little long. So I've placed the die with one end exactly where I want it, secured it in place with a bit of washi tape, and ran it through my die cutting machine. But before I remove the die cut, I reposition the die at the other end of my sentiment and run it through my die cutting machine a second time. This creates a custom-sized sentiment strip. Before I start assembling my card, I thought it'd be fun to stamp another one of the great sentiments from the uncorked stamp set inside my card base. Again, any effort to add those little finishing details to a project is what takes it to the next level. I placed my card base into my Mini Misty stamping tool and positioned the stamp in the center of the inside panel. I'm inking it up with some black licorice dye ink, and I give it some good pressure to transfer all the ink. The beauty of the Misty is that if you don't get a perfect impression the first time, you can re-ink and stamp again. It's finally time to assemble the wine tag and card. I've gathered all of my die cut pieces, and I've added tiny bits of foam tape to the backs of the wine bottles, wine glasses, words, and sentiment strips. I'm adhering the labels and corks to the wine bottles with some permanent tape runner adhesive. I'm removing the release paper from the foam tape, and I'm adhering the die cut pieces to the image panel. Placement of the die cuts is definitely a subjective thing. I'm a clean and simple girl, so I like to cluster the die cuts together for a bold and bright focal area. But honestly, placement is completely up to you. I repeat the assembly steps for the wine tag, similar to the card. The only difference is that I turn the Cheers word die cut on its side. Again, the layout of your images is completely up to you. That's what's so fun about creating. Whatever makes you happy works. I love how the rainbow of colors on each of the die cuts flow together to really add a happy vibe to the whole project. You can't go wrong with a rainbow. I wanted to add a bit of bling to my tag and card, so I pulled out my favorite sparkling clear sequins. I've arranged a couple of different sizes of the sequins in a triangle shape, in places where I want to draw attention to the focal image. The rule of threes is one that's so important in design. Having 3 of something on a project, or an odd number, is more pleasing to the eye. I particularly like the sparkling clear sequins because they enhance but don't overwhelm. There's those clean and simple tendencies creeping in again. I'm adhering the sequins to each of the projects with multi-medium matte and a Tonto embellishment tool. The multi-medium matte is a super strong liquid adhesive that has great hold and dries clear and matte, so that if some of it happens to ooze out a bit, it won't show. And there you have it, a super fun gift set that you can put together in pretty short order. With the new wine tag, uncorked stamp set, wine service, and Cheers Dynamics, most of the work is already done for you. I hope you've enjoyed my video and have a great time creating your own wine tag and card gift sets. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.